Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario. Gray Albright, how you doing over there, Gray?
Hey, what's going on, nerds? I just got through a hurricane. That's how I'm doing, man. I went outside like one of those. I was outside yesterday. We're recording on Monday. I went outside yesterday during the hurricane in Los Angeles. Like I was one of those newscasters wrapped in. I was like a newscaster slash Morton's fisherman wrapped in yellow pleather going against the grabbing onto the tree and my feet are like flying up. I think we got about an inch and a half of rain. It was the biggest. It was like honestly, we've gotten more rain on a random Wednesday in January. I mean, it doesn't rain a lot in LA, but it rains more than what we just got from our so-called hurricane. I don't know. Maybe they got hit harder elsewhere, but obviously I wouldn't. I'm not. I'm not being insensitive to other people.
As you
maybe,
laugh at them. As you're literally laughing at them.
maybe a little. Maybe you would take it as being insensitive.
Maybe you would take it as insensitive as
But
me
I'm
not being
saying,
able to pull back my
no.
laughs.
This is you. This is you interpreting me. That's not me. No,
Sorry, I
seriously.
interpreted laughs wrong. That's my bad, Gray.
Yeah. That's on you with your
Put it
interpret.
on the Asians. So not only
Yeah.
are
This
you
is this is
disrespectful of who might be hurt, now you're coming after the Asians as a group. Now you're, I mean, come on, Gray.
this is the agent's fault. No, it's not. No, I don't even don't clip that out of context. Not, don't do that to
One
me.
100%. I'm throwing that everywhere.
No, honestly, we were like 20 minutes into the hurricane and the tree in our front lawn fell. It just fell. Like there is like literally like maybe 1 mile per hour winds, and honestly, it was a drizzle, and it just like our tree fell over. I swear to God, I'm not even. This is not even a joke. It's like it barely missed my car by like 3 feet. So that happened first thing in the morning during the hurricane, and it was really. I think it was just because our tree was rotted. It had nothing to do with the hurricane, but because the hurricane was going on, like all the sanitation people in the city were like, you want us to come out and do I mean, this is like our busiest day of the year, maybe of the last 10 years, and you want us to come out and like take care of the tree that fell. We're like, yes, please. Anyway, it got cleaned up. We're good. You know,
Yeah, we all feel so bad that you had to deal with a tree in your yard, Gray.
I have
That's the worst thing. The rest, yeah.
my shirt that says I survived a hurricane is answering a lot of questions. No, I'm good. Thanks for asking, people. I appreciate it. I appreciate your concerns, everyone who didn't ask. Thank you.
Not a single person asked how you were,
Yeah.
right?
No. Literally no one. People were like, so should I pick up Eddie Rosario or Kerry Carpenter? It's like, you could ask if I'm okay with the hurricane, maybe? No one asked. That's okay though. And people don't have to ask. I'm fine. Thank you.
If it makes you feel better, I didn't even know there was one. So it wasn't so much that I wasn't worried about you, as that I'm oblivious to what happens outside of about 100-mile radius
the,
of my
the,
life,
the
unless
funniest
it is
thing
sports
is,
related.
right now, everyone who's listening, only thing they care about right now is from anything that's been mentioned is well, should it be Eddie Rosario or Kerry Carpenter?
Did you answer the damn
Can
question?
you answer that question? That's all anyone cares about. Like I literally talked 10 minutes about a hurricane and people are like, okay, so about that Carpenter Rosario thing.
Yeah, that was my question. I've been waiting, and you still haven't answered, Gray. So anytime you want to go ahead and feel free to respond to that one, you know.
Mm.
All right, so we'll transfer in from Gray's terrible story about his life into the terrible story that we're trying not to talk about. Wander Franco, who really we don't know anything more about other than he's still not with the team. He's on disciplinary leave. Gray, anything else that you wanted to say here?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not. I don't think there's anything to say right now. Like I said earlier, we're recording on Monday, and supposedly the Rays have to make a decision, or the league, whether they're going to investigate further. And by the time people listen to this, they'll probably know what the outcome of that is. So yeah, there's nothing else for us to say right now.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to some good news for a change from that great intro that we had there, Gray. Let's move over to some call ups. One of the top prospects in the game, Noelvi Marte, was called up. Kevin Newman, Jonathan India are on the IL for the Reds, so they have some vacancies right now. They called up Marte. I kind of was expecting them just to recall Senzel, but he's been bad even once he got demoted down to AAA. For Marte, 50 games in AA this season. He had 8 home runs, 10 stolen bases. He had 281, 356, 464. And then 39 games in AAA. He had 3 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 280, 365, 455. He was a sub 20% K rate at both and a minimum of a 10% walk rate at each stop. He started at third base. It looks like Votto and CES are going to split first base DH, and he hit 7th in his game that he played so far. Where are you at on Marte? Is he a must-add in all leagues, Greg?
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, he's got loud tools. God bless the Reds and their prospects with loud tools. They have a few of them. And Marte, I mean, just to give you an idea, in the beginning of the season when he did a top 10 Reds prospect list, Marte was number 2 behind Ellie De La Cruz and in front of Christian and Encarnacion Strand. So that's sort of where Itch was at with Marte. And for fantasy, I mean, I don't disagree because with fantasy, you want speed and power, and Marte's got it. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think Marte's definitely a pickup in all leagues. I was kind of surprised. It felt a little lukewarm in the comments today on Razzball whether or not to pick up Marte. Like there wasn't a ton of people asking, which is a little surprising because I was able to pick him up in our RCL 12-team mixed league. So I'm sure he's out there in a lot of people's leagues. So I was kind of surprised that more people weren't asking about him. It is, in fairness to those people, though, it is the time of season where, if it's like Marte or Eddie Rosario, yeah, I mean, Eddie Rosario has been a top 5 bat in the league for the last week. So I kind of get that. I mean, I understand you should be going for the best bat overall and not for the guy with the most upside. Like if this was March, then Marte obviously over Eddie Rosario. But since it's not March, I can see it. I mean, I understand going for the, you want to go for the top bat. Just in general, and you don't want to necessarily chase upside. So yeah, I mean I get it, but I love Marte. Like you were saying, his numbers. I mean, I don't even. He's so young. Once again, like Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, his power and his speed. Like he's already stolen 1 base. He looks real. I mean, he looks faster than the prospect grades that they have for him. I think he's probably closer to like a 15, 20 steal guy over the course of a season, of course. And he's got big time power. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit maybe 25 homers, 15 steals over the course of even just next year if he were to start the year with the Reds. For this year, it's just like he's batting 7th, like you mentioned. It's hard to say exactly what you're going to get from him, but I would pick him up just in case, he comes up and he's hitting well, in his first taste of the majors.
Yeah, I mean, even with Eddie Rosario, I know he had a great week. I think he had what 2 home runs this week, and he had. I mean, he got hits like every single game that he played. So I know the last 7 day player rater is going to be fond of him, but realistically, like it's Eddie Rosario. As fast as he gets hot, he gets cold, ice cold, and then like he's unusable. Ultimately, over the season, he's like a 20, low 20s, 20 mid 20s home run hitter
We have become
two
an Eddie Rosario podcast.
with 260. Like if you need speed, I don't have any problem going after Marte in this example though. Is what I was a bit just building
Yeah.
up to.
Yeah, no, I
If
hear you. Right.
it's a league where both these guys are available, so it's fairly shallow because I think in most 15-team leagues, Eddie Rosario is not available in a 15-team deeper league. Um, but in a shallow 12-team or a 10-team league, they probably are. And then you just kind of ride them back and forth. And yeah, maybe you ride Rosario right now while he's hot and hitting the ball well, but just be ready to swap that out. And you're looking for speed. It's definitely Marte because Rosario's not going to do any of that. They're basically hitting in the same spot in the order right now. But my concern with Marte would be long term. I don't know that the Reds necessarily are going to keep him on the roster once they're healthy. With because they've fought every tooth and nail to keep Kevin Newman on the bench, even with all the call ups. India will certainly have a spot whenever he's ready, if he's ready. So, I mean, you gotta worry about that part of it, but that's really the only concern right now for Marte on me.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I would say all that for sure. If Rosario is cold by Wednesday, I would have no problem switching them. I mean, I just think he's probably a little bit hotter right now. And, it's just like go for the hotter bat versus the guy who may come up and, go 0 for 20 in his first week. I don't know. I like Marte though. Like I said, I think he's definitely an ad in every league. To give people an idea in for Fab for out of $1,000, I got Marte in one league for $81, and no one else bid on him. So I overbid by 81. But you know what? Whatever. It's the end of the year. I don't think no one's holding their money for anything. I believe I had like $160 left. So I put half of it on Marte. It's not like anyone else is coming up that I'm going to have to scramble for Fab for. And then in another league, someone got him for $33 out of 1,000. And the next top bid was $31. And in that league, I didn't have money to bid. So, so that just shows you where people are at, I think, with Fab. I would say and those were, by the way, those were 15-team mixed leagues. And then in my NL only Tout Wars league, I think he went for like $175. Also, obviously, out of 1,000. And then I think the next runner up on there was like maybe 130. But again, people just don't have Fab left anymore. Everyone's already spent most of their Fab money. So, bid accordingly. If you need them, go for it. But, I wouldn't think you probably have to bid that much. I could have obviously bid a lot less in the league where I won them, but, whatever.
Yeah, what's it like to have over, even $80 of Fab left? That must be nice, Gray. That's an experience. I'm
I
not
know.
sure
I
how to.
probably, if I wasn't doing my Fab during a hurricane, I probably would have paid closer attention to how much other people had. I would guess there's not a ton of left in that league where I overbid by $81. But then again, well, a guy will go over in a little bit. Nolan Schanuel. Nolan Schanuel. What is he, a pocketbook? Nolan Schanuel. Anyway, you guys know who I'm talking about. He went for $67 in that league, and the next runner up for that guy was $1. So it's like, I don't think anyone's really, You just bid on what you want to bid on, I guess, at this point, is my point.
Yeah, I have about $3 max bids now, and that's in like the one league I have any money left. So yeah, I'm just hoping that things fall through at this point. And Rosario's real easy. I mean, you start him at home. That's pretty much the Eddie Rosario experience. He's there Monday through Wednesday this week, and then you can cut him and move on to Noelvi Marte or somebody else. Let's talk about somebody else real quick, Gray. Let's talk about Masyn Winn. We talked about him a little bit last week, but he got the official call up. Lars Dupar, Nolan Gorman going to the IL. They are joining Brendan Donovan, Dylan Carlson. So the Cardinals are down a number of bats in 105 games in AAA this year. Winn has 18 home runs, 17 stolen bases. He's hitting 288, 359, 474. He's got a 16.7% K rate and a 9% walk rate. Played in 3 straight games, but he is hitting ninth. Are you interested in Masyn Winn? Where does he rank in the Marte Eddie Rosario conversation?
No,
We're
no
just going to
more.
use Eddie
No
Rosario
more. No more.
as the
No more.
benchmark
No
the
more.
rest of
I
the
refuse. I
podcast.
refuse to mention Eddie Rosario again after that one mention. Actually, a good question. Maybe I'll put it back to you. Would you go Winn or Marte?
I think if you're going for right now and you're just kind of writing it, I'm going with Marte in a deeper league where you have to kind of assume that one's going to play for a while. I guess I'm still going Marte because Winn has the same issues with people coming back eventually. So I'm going Marte in either scenario.
Yeah, I went. Because a few people actually in the comments today on my post asked Winn or Marte. I went Marte as well. I think Marte's got more power, better park. He's got enough speed. Winn's got more speed, but Marte has enough speed for the final 6 weeks. I think Winn is just. I think Winn's great too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I wrote up the Masyn Winn buy post 10 days or so ago as my lead buy, telling people to grab them right before players were getting called up. So I like Winn. I mean, I think he's probably like next year. Next year is going to be interesting. Well, Winn, for people who don't know, I mean, as you mentioned his stats, but he's a power speed guy. He's actually probably got better contact maybe than Marte over the big picture long term. But that could change because Marte's young, but Winn's young as well. Anyway, I think next year is going to be an interesting scenario for Winn or Marte if we're looking at like in March for 2024. I would probably say Winn in that scenario because I don't know if Marte, like, I'm convinced Winn is starting the season with the Cardinals next year. I don't know if that's going to be Marte's situation because just because he was called up now doesn't mean he's definitely going to start the year. I mean, he could. Definitely, it's a possibility now for sure. I just don't know if he necessarily will. Where Winn, I think, is definite. So it'll be hard to say. I don't know. I mean, if we're in March and it looks like Marte is going to start the year with the Reds, I'll probably go Marte over Winn still. But just thinking about like 2024 right now without any, knowledge of what's going to happen in March, I think I might go Winn over Marte to begin the preseason, and then that could potentially switch if we start getting rumblings about Marte starting the year. I don't know. It's going to be hard though. Where are you? Are you definitely Marte for 2024 as well?
Well, like you said, we'll have to see if they both get the same opportunity coming into the season. I mean, I think the only thing potentially even holding back Marte is just how crowded it is in Cincinnati in the infield. So unless somebody moves to the outfield, which they could potentially transfer somebody to left field and in Cincinnati. I mean, that's one of the most straightforward defensive outfields that you can possibly play. And really, left field in that whole division's not tough. They're all pretty straightforward. So they could potentially move somebody left field, and then maybe Marte gets the full there. But I would say the same thing with Winn. Like, they have O'Neill still under contract. They have Walker, who's going to play. I mean, right now they have like Palacios playing center field. I don't know that he's necessarily holding Winn back, but you have, the Dylan Carlson, Lars Nootbaar also taking up playing time. I would say it's Marte because if the Reds trot Marte out there, I think there's no doubt he's playing most days. Whereas, has any outfielder for the Cardinals played most days this year? I don't think so.
Right. Well, Winn is, I think, defensively better than Marte. So Wynn's like, I just
Yeah,
feel like
I think
Winn
so.
is like you put him at short and you never think about him again. And then you start figuring out the rest of your lineup. Like you put wherever Edmund goes or I don't even know. Sorry, I didn't even know. I don't even know necessarily their contract situations. Like if any of these guys are due to leave, but like Winn is such a great defensive shortstop. I feel like he's starting and he's going to get 500 plus at bats just because of his arm and his glove. And then I don't know if I could say the same for Marte right now. Maybe I don't know. It'll be interesting. It could change. I really like Marte too. Like, don't get me wrong. I like Winn and Marte a lot, both of them. So yeah, I don't know. This could change. This whole everything we've just said could change. Come January of next year. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in regards to their playing time. And I mean, given the opportunity right now, what they do in this period of time is going to influence that. I mean, as much as we like to say, clubs will take the prospect pedigree and the stats of the minors and get their shot. If they come up at the end of the season and rake, that certainly helps teams go, oh, okay, he's ready, and we're going to go into next year with that thought.
Yeah,
Where,
totally. No, absolutely. Like, no, completely. Like, if Marte hits like 10 homers in the final 6 weeks, ignore everything I just said about whether or not he's starting the year. Like if he hits the ground running, absolute or win for that matter. Like, then it's going to take all those question marks away. But yeah, I think as of right now, we probably still have a few question marks.
yeah, and I will say, shortstop for the Cardinals isn't necessarily the deepest position for them. I know I was rattling off outfielders, really more about like finding the playing time and just feeding him in the roster, but they don't really have built-in shortstops in that lineup. So I think you're right in regards to Masyn Winn's opportunity to start next year. I think him starting ninth in the order I mean, it's still a pretty decent batting order. As much as I don't want to admit that as a Cubs fan, like the pieces are still there for it to be a good offense. It just isn't right now. So we'll see if he can climb up that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, both very interesting. I mean, if anything, Wynn's production was a little bit more in the minors from a just pure home runs and stolen bases. I just think the skill set of Marte is a little bit more polished right now. Both of them very young.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's move over to San Francisco where they made a few moves. They've called up Kyle Harrison. He's going to get the Tuesday start at Philly for the Giants. In AAA this year, he has a 4.66 ERA, 1.52 whip in 20 starts, which is 65 and two-thirds innings for him. He does have a 35.6% K rate. To couple that with a 16.3% walk rate, there's a
Oof.
few bad starts that make those numbers look worse. He's pitching in the PCL, but the numbers kind of tell you what's going on here, Gray.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I think I don't know. I was kind of excited about him in March. I drafted him in one NL only league, and I still have him in that league. I think it's the league we're in together, the CBS league. So I've had Harrison the whole year, held on to him. I'm not really expecting much, to be honest. I think Itch has kind of cooled me a little bit on him because Itch is pretty down on him with because of the walk rate and everything. I don't know. I think in mixed leagues, maybe as a streamer, wait and see what happens, see how he looks in his first start on Tuesday. In an NL only league, you have to do what you have to do, obviously. So, I mean, he's probably at this point he's rostered everywhere in those leagues, and then in like a 15 team mixed league, I was saying before, watch and see for probably like a 12 team or shallower. For a 15 team mixed league, I mean, obviously you watch and see what happens, but 15 team too. But yeah, I mean, I could see potential matchups for a 15 team mixed league if, as long as he's not awful in his first start, it'll really depend on how bad he looks. Like if he looks as bad as the numbers in the minor leagues look, then he's probably not startable in any mixed league. But if he's able, because he does have good stuff, like that's even why we're even talking about him. Like he's really good. It's just his command was a bit of a mess, at least early on in the minors. So yeah, I mean, if he comes up and his command is on point, then he could potentially get on, all shallow mixed team radars. But right now, I think it's a wait and see because, his numbers are just a little bit scary. Like you don't want to mess with a rookie who can't command his pitches at least from the jump. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I know there's probably some that want to like compare because the strikeout rate at least is similar on him and Strider, but Strider throws, like 98 miles an hour, and the worst walk rate he had at any stop in the minors was like 10.9%, which is better than anything really that Harrison has done at any stop that he spent more than 30 innings at. So we're still talking about quite a transition from what he's like doing to get down to even where Spencer Strider's gotten to with his control.
He's not exactly. I mean, he's not exactly a slouch, Harrison. That is when it comes to like he's got a mid-90s fastball and he touches like 98. So it's like he's not Strider though. I'll give you that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying like that. I feel like that after seeing Strider do what he did and seeing the K potential here, there's that desire to want to kind of put Strider on here and think that we have a savior for the last few weeks. I'm not saying that's not possible because he could come up and just absolutely destroy people. He is nasty. For a lefty to have like 95 miles an hour up to 97, 98, that's pretty ridiculous. That's almost as good as a righty having 100, just comparing them. So he could absolutely do that. I don't want people to get their minds made up that he's coming up and he's going to be Spencer Strider. The numbers just don't look like that to me. It seems like the command is still, a work in progress here.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Moving on to the next Giants call-up, Luis Matos was recalled. 31 games in Double-A. He had 3 home runs, 9 stolen bases. He had 304, 398, 443. 27 games in Triple-A. He had 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He had 367, 406, 625. He has a sub 10% K rate at both stops, a career 7.2% walk rate in the minors, and that's pretty much where the kind of area he was at both Double-A and Triple-A this year. Are you interested in Luis Matos getting a chance with the Giants?
I was more interested earlier in the season when he was first called up. Now I'm a little bit less so. It's hard, like for the final whatever we have left, like 5 weeks or whatever. His main strength is batting average, and that's not always a skill set that is readily apparent in like a given amount of time. So it's like he gets called up and he goes like 2 for 4 a bunch of games in a row with like no real power or speed. Like he does have power and speed, like don't get me wrong, but if he doesn't show it and he's just showing his hit tool, it's kind of like, it's not really that exciting for the final, month plus. Like if this were April, I would be more excited. Even if it were May or June, I would be more excited because then you have a chance for him to settle in. But if he's just going to be hitting, singles, it's not as exciting. But he does have power and speed. So, but they're just not really loud, I don't think, especially the power. And San Francisco is not the greatest stadium, so I'm a little bit lukewarm actually on Luis Matos. I was a little bit more excited about him, like roughly when he was called up originally, and now that he didn't flame out, but he was kind of a bore for his first 51 games in the majors. He's still super young though. Like, don't get me wrong. Like next year, I may be really big into Luis Matos. Like I'm definitely intrigued by him, and I think he could have like a huge career. But as of like this second, for like the final month plus, I mean, if he gets hot, sure, but he's no Eddie Rosario. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part that's really going to hurt him is hitting the bottom part of the lineup. If they called him up and they're like, hey, you don't strike out, we're just going to stick you at the top of the lineup and you do your thing, then there's some interest there because, a 300 average or higher with a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, and hitting the top of the lineup, that's interesting even over a short period of time. That can be useful over the next, month in a week or so that we have left in the season. But if he's sitting seventh, eighth, which is where he started so far, and even especially if he's getting kind of platooned or not getting every start, then that, like you said, it's not a great skill set, and you kind of need to show that you have average before we trust you to provide it at the major league level as well, and you're not going to get that time.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, kind of moving over to that part that I was saying, where at the top of the lineup, maybe it becomes a little more interesting. Wade Meckler was called up by San Francisco. He seems to be on the strong side of the platoon and has hit first or second at every time he's played so far. Now across 3 levels this year, it's 69 games, 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He's hit 379, 463, 522. It's just a guy who hits Gray, and I mean, apparently they believe that he's going to continue to do it because they've put him at the top of the lineup and let him kind of do that for the most part. Now today, I say that, and I think the lineup today has him hitting 8. So,
Oh my. I was just looking at the Giants depth charts, and I must have missed the news that Crawford was injured. I didn't realize their starting shortstop is Johan Camargo. Wow. That's a
yep.
that's a throwback. When did that happen? Whoa. Johan Camargo? You gotta be kidding me. What? Oh,
The
Camargo.
Giants are in like just a terrible place right now.
Oh
They don't
my
have anybody
God.
to start.
What a mess.
They have 2 healthy starters.
Wade Meckler. I mean, what is that? What even is that, man? Wade Meckler? Come on, man. Come on, bro. That's not a real name.
What Dr. Seuss book did you pull that from?
Yeah, come on, Meckler. Get out of here. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he looks worse than Matos, to be totally honest. I think his hit tool is also good. So, in theory, hit for a decent average, even though right now he's striking out like almost 60% of the time. But that's a small sample size. So, yeah, I mean, Meckler could be interesting for NL only. I think Matos is more interesting than Meckler, but Matos doesn't have everyday at bats. Where Meckler at least he's on the strong side of the platoon, as you mentioned. Where Matos looks like he's on the weak side of the platoon. So I mean, Meckler is probably better for right now, but in the big picture, I like Matos better. But honestly, in most leagues, you can do better.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. And to the strikeout point, he has 11 strikeouts in 6 games in the majors. In 39 games at Double A, he had 29 strikeouts. So I mean, it's both those are pretty small sample sizes, but not great that he's at 11 strikeouts for a guy who's basically just not supposed to strike out. But give him a little time. He is only 23. He's very young. He moved very fast through the system. So we'll see what happens with Wade Meckler. As you mentioned, probably have better options than both of these guys, but this is wanting to bring him up, talk about them as they got called up. Uh, this is your boy Gray. You wanna take another shot at his name here?
No, Nolan Schanuel.
He was called up by the Angels. Now he's gone through 3 levels this year. Hit 370, 510, 493 with a home run, 2 stolen bases. He's leading off. He's only the 6th non-pitcher called up by August in their draft year. So that's pretty impressive, Gray, for a handbag.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He's actually, I mean, the Angels are like they're like Henry Hill during the montage when the guy's like, "You want to see helicopters?" in Goodfellas. Like they're like the Angels are doing a line of coke and just calling up everyone. They're just like out of control right now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in the front office with the Angels, but they are so overhyped with like their adrenaline. Something's going on. Are they on energy drinks? Like what's going on with the Angels, and why are they making so many call-ups just like of guys who are barely have been in the minors? Like Nolan Schanuel has been in the minors for like literally like 3 weeks, bro. He's I'm like, just getting comfortable in the minor leagues. I don't know. I think if I had to guess, what I think is going on is like Artie Moreno, the Angels owner, said to Perry, the Angels GM, he was like, "Hey, we got to make it look like we're trying here to keep Ohtani around. So do whatever it takes to make it look like we're trying." And Perry's like, "It's past the deadline. I can't trade for people. What am I supposed to do?" He's like, "I don't know. Call someone up. Do something." So basically, that's where we're at. I think with the Angels, I don't know. They're out of control, man. I don't know what's going on there. They're like hyped up. they're like in that scene in Boogie Nights when the guy's throwing firecrackers. Like that's the Angels. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he looks like he was great. He was solid in college. There's like no sample size at all for the minor leagues for Nolan Schanuel. But in college, he was good. Down in Florida, I think he had like 19 homers and 19 steals, I want to say. So he's got like maybe surprising speed for a first baseman, and he's got like average-ish power for a first baseman. So I would say maybe if things go well, Ty France with more speed. Potentially, he's got a good hit tool, so he should hit for average. I think on Rasball, I compared him to like a young James Loney. So yeah, maybe. I mean, it's really too early to say. So potentially, that's what we're getting.
I mean, he could be I mean, eventually he could grow into the average part, but he kind of give you what Freddie Freeman's given you this year, minus the average and massive counting numbers.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I mean, it's
mean,
possible. I mean, that's like best case
yeah,
scenario in like 5 years, I think. Maybe less
yeah,
time, maybe 3 years. But yeah, I mean, for this year, I say Tyler. I say Ty France, maybe
yeah,
with a little bit more speed,
yeah.
potentially for
That's
this
good.
year.
I like the Ty France one too. I like that comp. Just he does have a little bit of speed, so he'll kick in. It seems like he's going to kick in a few. Whereas Ty France has stolen, I think, one bag in his entire career.
Actually, you know what? Ohtani may have said something to like Artie Moreno. Might have been like, "Hey, man, I handbags. You got anything like I don't know. And Artie was like, hey, Perry, do we have like a Chanel something? He's like, I got something just like that. I have something very similar. I think you're gonna love this. I don't Nolan Schanuel.
21 games. I mean, 21 games has to be. I know I said there were 6 and I did that research. I have no idea. This has to be one of the shortest amount of games played before.
Well, there's some guys. Sorry, not to interrupt, but there's some guys who go directly from. I believe there's a few guys who never even touch the minor leagues. Like there's a few, not a lot, but there's occasionally there'll be a guy who doesn't go to the minor leagues at all.
Yeah, I'll have to do that research real quick as we move on. But let's move on to another call up. Parker Meadows was called up by Detroit in AAA this year. He had 19 home runs, 19 stolen bases, hit 256, 337, 474. Today he's hitting 6th and playing center field. What are you at on Parker Meadows? Where does he fit in with the rest of these call ups that we've kind of talked about?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say this: like all the call ups we've talked about. Like, well, Marte and Winn are their own. I guess they're their own thing. But like these other guys, if they're not hitting, they're kind of useless. And Parker Meadows, I think, is in that sort of boat as of right now. Like, if you're looking, like at least for most shallower mixed leagues, if you're looking for a guy off of waivers, you go with a guy like Eddie Rosario, right? Steady Eddie Rosario, or Kerry Carpenter, or Torkelson, or Riley Green, or any other potentially hot bat in the Tigers lineup besides Parker Meadows. I mean, you really could go with anyone over Parker Meadows, or Nolan Schanuel, that for that matter, if they're not hitting. So if they are hitting, then, fine in shallower leagues. For deeper leagues, like deeper saying like, maybe a 15-team mixed league for Parker Meadows, and obviously AL only. In those leagues, you're looking at a guy who, like, this year he went, well, you said the stats, but I mean, Parker Meadows actually looks pretty good. Like, he looks potentially like he could have like some real, like he could be a sleeper for next year, or, at least someone who you draft at the final rounds, if he has, a set job coming into like 2024. Like, he looks interesting. He does. Like, he's got power. He's got speed. I worry a little bit, like if he can't hit for a decent average in the minor leagues at 23, that definitely concerns me a little bit. Like, if he's hitting 256 in AAA at 23 years old, that's like, being fair. I mean, being very generous, he's hitting 220 in the majors, at worst. I mean, excuse me, at best. Like, at worst, it could be like 190. So I'm concerned, especially since he doesn't have like a ton of strikeouts and he hits 256. So that, to me, that says he's not making the hardest of contact in the minor leagues. That, that could be wrong. I could potentially be mistaken there, but that's what it looks like. It looks like he's making weak contact. So weak contact isn't the best situation for a prospect. But, with that said, he's got power, he's got speed, and he should have an everyday job, I believe, on the Tigers. Like, the Tigers have no reason to not play him. If they're calling him up and they're not playing him, then they're just dumb. So I'm assuming they're going to play him, at least against everyone except maybe lefties, which is fine. So, yeah, I like him in like a 15-team mixed league or deeper for right now. And if he starts hitting, then potentially shallower leagues could be interested in Parker Meadows.
Yeah, it seems like maybe I'm a little bit more forgiving on the average than you are. I don't think 23 is necessarily that old. Now, granted, he came out as an 18-year-old, so he's been in the system for a long time. But I don't know. 23 is still not that far along for me. If he's a 27-year-old that's been around and he's hitting 256 at AAA, this is his first year in AAA and he's hitting 256. Like, that's that's fine with me. I don't have any issue with that. I think we've seen like O'Neal Cruz was hitting like 230 when he got called up, and didn't have 19 home runs and 19 stolen bases. And we saw what he was able to do in the majors. So I'm not comparing Parker Meadows to O'Neal Cruz. I'm just saying I'm not necessarily overly worried that somebody's hitting 256 at their first time at AAA at 23. But we'll see what happens in the majors. And yeah, I think it's somebody to keep an eye on for next year. I don't think he quite has the same kind of prospect buzz as some of the guys we've talked about to this point.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Absolutely. What's funny is I don't think holding back like service time issues weren't always a thing in the major leagues. So I'm sure you looked this up too while I was talking, that the players who have gone from the draft straight to the major leagues is an extensive list of players, but it's one guy in the last 10 years because now everyone goes to the minors and gets their service time messed with. But
Yeah,
there's a ton of guys. You saw the list.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them.
The biggest ones are like Dave Winfield did it. Mel Ott. There's a Sandy Koufax, Al Kaline. There's a Bob Feller. There's a few Hall of Famers, and then there's like Xavier Nady. but anyway, that's a rabbit hole we don't have to go down.
Yeah. So it is definitely a little bit different in regards to how baseball is managed now, and a lot of times, at least I believe this is how it was back, back in the day. Like the players would potentially get drafted out of, college or high school, and they may not ever step foot in the minors because the minors was just kind of a piece of crap, and you didn't want good players rolling around in the minors.
Yeah, I mean Nolan Schanuel was in college, so yeah, that's a similar situation to like Dave Winfield. Like he was a college star, and then he went straight to the majors. So it's not totally bizarre, but nowadays it's much more rare. I mean, there's only one guy in the last 10 years, it looks like, who's done it.
Yeah, and I think the number I gave was guys who did go to the minors and then get called up in the same season. So
Right.
slightly different than the getting called up straight out of the
Right.
draft.
Yeah. True.
But yes, that's why if anybody's like, oh, well, you just said only like 6 people or 6 non-hitters or whatever did it, that there was a different stat. So that's why.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Just letting everybody know there's somebody yelling at their like me. Somebody like me is doing it.
Right. Dear listener, comma, what Beadon said.
All right. A former top prospect was recalled following his rehab assignment. Royce Lewis. I threw him in the podcast description last show because I meant to bring him up when we were talking about potential call-ups, and I meant to bring him up and didn't. But hopefully the one listener who saw it and commented on it picked up Royce Lewis because he was called up pretty much immediately as we released the podcast. 31 games in the majors this year. He's had 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, had hit 319, 358, 460. So he has done everything that we wanted to see him do. I mean, you got to pick him up over pretty much everybody we've talked about to this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. We that's our podcast outline is like a bunch of guys you don't want, and then the guy you do want. You gotta wade through a lot of crap to get to the good stuff on this podcast. You gotta Wade Meckler through a lot. Okay, yeah, no, Royce Lewis, I think he's like, like you said, I mean, he is like the guy to pick up if you're in a league where he's available. Absolutely. I mean, he's like not only a top prospect, but he's already seasoned enough where he's going to be good. He should be good at least, barring bad luck or something, and barring an injury. But yeah, he should be good. And he's hitting, I want to say like in the 3 hole the Twins aren't a great team, but he's hitting like either 2, 3, or 4 every day. So yeah, I mean, absolutely pick up Royce Lewis. He reminds me like him. Well, I wouldn't say reminds me, but he reminded me of like what we used to say about Alex Kirilloff. Like if he can stay healthy, he's gonna be great. And I don't know why the Twins have so many of these. You throw in Buxton, you throw in Kirilloff, you throw in Lewis. I don't know what the deal is with the Twins, but like Lewis is another guy that he's a star if he can just stay on the field. Like he's gonna be he could be really good, but he's got to avoid injuries.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if both those guys could figure out what's going on, and just stay healthy for a little bit. Um, back in the day, I would have blamed it on the AstroTurf in Minnesota, but pretty sure they play on natural grass now, so I can't even really go to that old lot there. Moving over to Atlanta, Ozzy Albies goes on to the IL with left hamstring. Return of my former favorite second baseman, which I started in a ton of leagues, Vaughn Grissom. He was called up to sit on the bench apparently because he hasn't played. Platooning with Nicky Lopez still. We're still in this stupid.
I can't hear him.
God.
I can't hear Vaughn Grisham's name without thinking of me in the preseason saying, "Avoid all Braves except for Vaughn Grisham." Oh man, dumb. I'm a dum.
Well, I
Oh
loved
man.
all the Braves, but I also loved Vaughn Grissom.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, okay. I mean, that's a slight exaggeration. I did draft Matt Olson in a bunch of leagues, so I have been enjoying Matt Olson, and I also have Austin Riley, but I was pretty against Albies, Michael Harris II, and Acuna.
Yeah, those aren't good calls, Gray.
Those are no, they're
That did
not.
not work
They're
out for
not
you.
good calls. But you know what? You guys can go and look at my preseason stuff. So it's not like I can hide from it. So it's like embrace the what do they say? Embrace the bad. I don't know. Whatever they say, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, Vaughn Grisham. I mean, he looks good, like in general, if he were like playing, but and I can't even fault the Braves for playing Nicky Lopez over him because it's like they have so many bats. They don't need they don't need to be messing around with Vaughn Grisham and his terrible glove. Like they don't. It's like it's not something the Braves need. They have 8 hitters in their in their lineup that are solid, and I'm including Orlando Arcia. I mean, they have so many hitters that are so good that I mean, I get it. I can't even fault them for not playing Vaughn Grisham, and they're not playing him, so he's kind of useless for outside of NL only.
Yeah, I just need him to get traded so bad. I really want to see him play at the major league level. I know the glove isn't great, but I just the bat
I think
is.
he's got to get traded and moved to second, and if that happens, yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get moved to second or maybe third, just depending on where he ends up if he gets traded. But yeah, I would love to see him get opportunities. There's a bunch of like bench call ups and recalls that I was going to scatter us through, Gray, but let's just move on from them. And let's talk about your boy. Bo Bichette has returned. Toronto promptly DFA'd Paul DeYoung after trading for him at the deadline. I
What
mean,
was
we kind
that?
of.
What was that? Why would you trade for DeJong and then I mean, I'm not saying Paul DeJong is good, but why trade for him and then DFA him like 2 weeks later? Like
I
what?
don't.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Anyway, what were you gonna say? Go ahead.
I mean, no, I'm with you. I mean, I don't. They had infielders who could have just played the position for a couple of weeks. They would have been fine. The question isn't really for this year because Bo Bichette's on teams. You're not picking him up. You're starting him if you have him. But this is kind of where we were at the beginning of the season. Like, where are you ranking him for next year? I know you always a Bo Bichette fan, but the speed has dropped off. That was my thing in the preseason. That has come to fruition. The average did not drop. They put the bouncy balls back in play, and he's hit like 320, exactly 320 right now. But the power is not great. The speed isn't. like it's nowhere near where it was. Where does both Bichette falling next year in your rankings?
I was just looking. Sorry, I was looking at where he was on the player rater right now. Oh, he's all the way down at like 64. I mean, that's obviously coming off an IL stint, but still, that's pretty low. Yeah, I mean, now that we have 2 seasons of like declining speed, I can't argue in favor of him being a top 20 pick anymore. I mean, it's like he at this point, I'll give you a name. I think it's fairly good comp. Jose Altuve. I mean, it's not. I mean, that's not bad.
No.
Altuve, but Altuve goes at like 30. You know, anywhere between 25 and 35. So that's probably Bichette, if I'm going to be honest, probably like 30-ish overall. So yeah, I mean you were right to fade Bichette. I like, I like 5 category guys, but he's definitely not. He doesn't have steals anymore. He doesn't have the speed, so it's not. It's not like I can say 5 category anymore. He's he's barely a 4 category guy if his power isn't there too. And you can look at him and see he's never going to be a big power guy. I mean, that's obvious just looking at him. So, 25 homers, 5 steals, 300 average. Yeah, I mean, that's Jose Altuve with good runs and good RBIs. So that's around 30-ish overall, I think.
Yeah, I mean he's still a good baseball player. There's still value there. It's just not what we're used to seeing. So I was just curious where you were at for next year on your boy Bo as he came back. Let's play a little bit of your favorite game, Gray. Scientific fact: Sex Panther, and I don't believe you. And this is based off of the player rater. I did some season long, and then I had some 30 days guys here. We'll get to if we have time. Christian Yelich, number 14 full season, number 27 over the last 30 days. So he hasn't fallen off the face of the map. But like nobody bought Christian Yelich as anywhere near where he's at on the player rater. Can you even go in like close to where he's at now on the player rater for next year?
So I'll say scientific fact. Yelich and Bellinger were like tied at the hip in rankings and in ADP where they were getting drafted this preseason. And Bellinger, I mean, he was out for a little bit, but he's not far off from Yelich either. He's around 20 on the player rater. So yeah, I would say Yelich and Bellinger. I believe, but scientific fact, I believe both of them. But for 2024, I'll believe both of them with a caveat that I'm not going near them in the top 20. I feel like Yelich is going to be above. He might be a little bit above Cody Bellinger for me in the preseason, but very close. And I think both of them, like roughly, maybe Yelich say 25 and Bellinger maybe 45 ish. There's some leeway there, and obviously things can happen between now and the end of the season. But yeah, I mean that sounds about right, I think. So I do believe both of them. I think they're both scientific fact.
All right, I would probably flip it in regards to I would buy Bellinger before I'm buying Yelich, and that's almost primarily because of the age factor. One's going to be going into a 32-year-old season, one's be going into a 28, and I think Bellinger's going to get a contract, but he's going to have to keep playing, whereas Yelich is already paid. Like whenever he decides he doesn't want to give it full effort anymore, he can kind of do that. Um, but I'm with you that I'm not touching either top 20. I don't know if I'm even touching Yelich in the top 30, 40. I'd say around 50. I'd start considering him. Bellinger, we'll have to see where he fits in, but I would guess top 30, or just outside the top 30 for me. Moving over to, I believe we had a podcast, where I used him basically as our own personal punching bag with Lane Thomas when we discussed mid-season player rater. Well, he continued number 18 full season, number 13 the last 30 days grade. Lane Thomas continues to defy you and just do his Lane Thomas thing.
What's ironic about him defying me is that I wrote a sleeper post for him 2 years ago. I loved Lane Thomas going into last year, and he came up so short. So yeah, when I have him on all my teams, he stinks, and when I don't have him, he's great. That's the story of my fantasy life right now. I can't. It's hard because like a guy with Lane Thomas specifically, but in general, guys who don't have like huge power or huge speed or necessarily, locks for having great averages, it's so hard to trust them. Like I loved Lane Thomas, like I said, but I loved him when he was going at like 250 overall. I don't know, man. I unfortunately I don't want to dig my heels in on him being I don't believe you, but I don't believe him being a top 20 guy. I do believe him being like maybe top 100-ish. It's top 75, okay. Top 20? That's ridiculous, man. I don't believe that.
Okay. So, I mean, it seems like you're I don't believe you, but maybe a little bit of Sex Panther in there where you're buying some of it, but not all of not as a top 20 player that he has been. And I don't think anybody's going to draft him as a top 20 player.
Right. Yeah, a little Sex Panther. If he's going at 75, yeah, I might be interested. At 70, 75 overall, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you can do worse things there. I mean, he's kind of Brian Reynolds a little bit with like some speed if he can continue with it. So you just kind of like, yeah, it's fine. Nico Horner for my Cubs, number 28 full season, number 20 over the last 30. Is this the full breakout and he's jumping up another tier in the second base, or is this a career year and never again to have?
No, I think he's jumping up. Any like a guy like him, if he's able to have 30 plus steals, which he should have, and he can hit for a good average, like he makes great contact. And he's in a park where 10 homers isn't out of the question. So, 10, 35, 280, you weren't really expecting much more from like Trey Turner. I'm not saying Nico Horner is going to be a top 5 guy, but I totally, a scientific fact for me with Nico Horner, I totally believe him. I just don't know where he will be going next year. I don't think he's going to be top 20, but he may be top 50, and I could be interested.
Yeah, would you take him over the 3 guys we've talked about, Yelich, Thomas, and Bellinger?
I say Horner over Thomas, not over the first 2.
Okay, I think I would take him over Yelich. I think Bellinger is the only one that stays above him, and I may be able to be persuaded into swapping those 2 just because I've been full Bellinger before, and we know how bad that went at times. So there's still a little bit that hanging in my mind, and we'll also have to see where he ends up because I feel like the Cubs was a nice spot for him with little pressure. If he signs a fairly decent sized deal in another high pressure area, I don't know if that's going to go great for him. Bobby Witt Jr., number 6 full season, number 2 the last 30. And I only bring that up to kind of mention that him and Julio Rodriguez have just both been absolutely on fire this second half. Has Witt finally moved into that definitely first round, maybe even top half first round guaranteed for you? Or are you still fighting it?
No, I'm not fighting this anymore. No way. No, I can't. You know what? If I were fighting it, I'd just look like I already look like an idiot. I can't dig my heels in on being a moron. No, Bobby Wood Jr. I mean, that's the problem with disliking guys who have power and speed, because they can kill you in so many ways, or rather, they can do be good for fantasy in so many ways that it's just like you're fighting a losing battle by going against a guy with a power and speed, because it's like the only thing they need to do is be like semi decent on average, and they're going to have a great year for fantasy. Like, and I think Bobby Witt's showing that. Like, he's only got 24 homers and he's hitting 280, but the steals are so valuable. Even with a lot more steals in the league, the steals are so valuable that, like you said, he's 6 on the player rater. I mean, he's above Kyle Tucker. He's above Corbin Carroll. He's above Adolis Garcia, Ozzy. I mean, he's above, obviously, 400 players. But, I mean, he's like, he's doing so well that there's very few guys that are doing better, because he's got 37 steals. Like, he doesn't need to do a ton in the other categories. So even though his runs and RBIs are, in the Royals lineup, are maybe not as good as a guy like Adolis Garcia, they're still good enough that he's able to, put up a ton of value because of the power and the speed. And also, I mean, he's really not been that bad for average either this year, which is, a little bit of a surprise. But then again, I mean, it's not that big of a surprise, because all he had to do was cut his K rate a little bit, which he did. So yeah, I'm in on Bobby Witt Jr. I'm not fighting that anymore.
Okay. We finally dragged you on board the Bobby Witt train. I mean, he's been great actually. So he started the season terrible. He was hitting like 230 over the first 2 months. But to your point, he had 10 home runs, 17 stolen bases. I think he was still sitting in like the top 50 of the player rater, even after hitting 230 for 2 months. And since then, he's hitting over 300 since May ended. So, I mean, he's absolutely killing the ball right now.
Bobby Witt Jr. top 5 overall next year for you?
Yeah. I almost had him there this year. I mean, I'm definitely. I mean, he's proven everything I thought. I was like, he was a rookie. He put up 20, 30, 250 in his first season. Like, it's gonna grow, and that's what happened. So yeah,
it's hard for me to see anyone who would be. It's hard for me not to see him in the top 5 too. I think it's just looking at the top guys right now on the player rater. It's got to be. I mean, we'll do a top 20 at the end of the year for 2024. But yeah, I think Bobby Witt's got to be in the top 5. Absolutely.
I mean, it has to be some combination of Acuna, Ohtani,
Witt,
Julio
Rodriguez, and then there's wild card, like
fill in your blank on like Corbin Carroll,
Mookie Betts. Like one of those. No, it's definitely. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's go through these last 30-day player rater guys, just because there's a little bit more questioning them, because we don't have a full season of them being top 30 players like the guys we've talked about. Zach Geloff has come up and just all he's done is hit since being brought up. Gray, is this somebody we have to take seriously going into next season?
No.
No, not by any.
I think he's I think his chase rate is like the worst in the major leagues. Like, he's definitely, I feel like he's having a good he's having a good couple weeks / maybe a month plus, but I don't trust Zach Geloff in general. I could look at him in the offseason and change my mind, but as of right now, I believe his chase rate is pretty terrible. So for now, I mean, that's a big picture thing, though. Like, right now, obviously, all these guys should be picked up and rostered in every league. Like, they're hitting, and they're hitting well, so grab them. But for next year, I think I'm out on G-Loff. And it doesn't help, with the whole Oakland A's, like the lineup will be awful. I don't even, are they going to be Oakland next year? I don't even know. but the lineup will be terrible no matter where they're playing. It's not a good team. So even though like he has been hot, I don't trust him.
Yeah, that's completely fair. We'll see how he finishes the season out. It's not somebody we expected this kind of production from. I will say I've enjoyed having him on my roster, and he's helped a number of middle infield spots for me. As we've kind of gotten injuries and things piling up, and guys just not performing. But yes, I'm with you for now. Let's move on. C.J. Abrams, who doesn't have has not been getting hits, but he's been racking up stolen bases. Gray, I think the hit tool is going to come around. It's a guy that was always supposed to hit. I mean, 12, 33, 250 in 116 games is not a bad line for a first year, I guess second year, from CJ Abrams.
Yeah, like first full year. Yeah, no, and he's 22 years old. I'm all in on CJ Abrams. He's going to be. I'm going to try and get him everywhere next year. I feel like the price might be a little bit like high, but I'm going to be totally in on him. I absolutely believe CJ Abrams. He's like, I mean, neutral luck at hitting 250 with, on pace for like a 15 homer, 40 steal season. Yeah. I'm absolutely in on that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that sounds like a fun player
Yeah.
to have on my roster. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, there's not a whole lot of guys that have that kind of combination. I mean, we're talking the guys we just talked about is top five. Those are the kind of guys that have that kind of power
Yeah.
speed
Yeah,
combination.
he's gonna be like I feel like CJ Abrams is gonna get a lot of those like people are gonna be like, okay, if I remove the names of Trey Turner and this guy, which one do you want? And people are gonna be like, I want that guy, and then they're gonna be like, yeah, well that's CJ Abrams. Like, whoa, yeah. I mean that's CJ Abrams at this point. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, again, remove the names. Trey Turner, 14, 22, 14, 22, 250. He's going to be 33, 32,
Yeah.
something like that. Abrams is going to be 22
Yeah.
and just went 12, 33, 250. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I said it 1,000 times. It's like you gotta like it's a young player game. 20 just because a guy's just into the just because he's 22 and just in the league for a year, it doesn't make him worse than a guy who's been around for 10 years.
Yeah. No, I mean we've seen players are peaking, like their peak seasons are happening earlier and earlier, at least for our game, because that's when they have the speed and can put it all together for our purposes.
Mhm.
Bryson Stott has been putting it together for all our purposes recently. Gray, this is a guy we've been waiting for it to click for years. It feels like. Is it finally clicking, or is this one of those Bryson Stott bringing us back in streaks?
No, I like him. I think Bryson Stott's legit too. I think he's got a little bit less speed than CJ Abrams, even though right now their stats look kind of similar. But Stott's got like maybe say 20. I would say 24 steal speed, even though he's got 23 steals right now. I would say like 24 steal speed, maybe 12 to 15 homer power and like a 275 average, 280. So that's all, but that's good. And I think he's going to be pretty affordable in drafts next year. So yeah, I like Bryson Stott. I think he's going to be, I'm going to be in on him. I'm pretty sure next year.
I'm going to call this next guy my Lane Thomas, because I thought he was going to break out this year. I might have just been a year early. Kerry Carpenter has been really good recently, Gray, ever since returning from his little IL stint. And he's getting almost full time playing time, which he wasn't before. Are you in on Kerry Carpenter for the rest of this season, next season?
Definitely this season. Next season, I believe so. It looks like his numbers look pretty legit. Like his homer per fly ball is a little bit high, but not too bad. If he can play, like prorate his numbers out, and he's a 35 homer guy with a 280 average. So, I mean, he's got pretty much neutral luck right now, and he's hitting 281. He's got no speed, so that you sort of run into an issue usually in drafts where it's like you could take that or you can just wait on like a Randall Grichuk and sort of figure out stuff later with power. So Kerry Carpenter might not necessarily be the best draft value next year, depending on where he goes. But I do like him. I think I think he looks like he's breaking out. His numbers back it up, like what he's doing so far. And I believe he had the third most homers, I think, in the last like maybe 2 months. Third most homers in the AL, at least, something like that. I wrote it in the roundup on Monday. I've already forgotten, but it was something like that, like the third most homers. Anyway, yeah, I think he's legit. He just doesn't have he doesn't have any speed, and he doesn't necessarily. I wouldn't say his power is like eye-poppingly strong. So if he is, at the end of the day, his projections for next year probably are going to sit around like 28 to 30 homers and like a 270 average with 0 steals. That's fine. I just think that it depends on where he goes in drafts. So I like him, but there's obviously some caveats.
Yeah, that's completely fair, and we'll see. Make sure the playing time sticks. But right now he's hitting 4, 5, 6. The last, I think today he's hitting 4th. So to see him continue to climb up the lineup is also a nice thing to continue to see happen. Like I said, I like him. I think he's going to be a pretty solid player. But like you said, there's also no speed. The value can only be so much, but I think he's still a name that's going to go under the radar as people continue to kind of check out for this season that have had bad seasons. Like, I don't know, every team that I have that had Lance Lynn and Alek Manoah on it, along with Vaughn Grissom. And yeah. So, but yes, if you're paying attention still, there's names you can grab here, like a Kerry Carpenter, who's going to be nice next year. And Gunnar Henderson, it's another one who I have plenty of shares of. I wouldn't say he was bad this year, but, I think there's still better things to come, Gray. And he's starting to show it late in the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Gunnar Henderson is going to be a guy who I'm going to be targeting in just about every draft. He looks basically like he had, an early season slump, but he looks more or less in line with what you would be expecting. I mean, more or less. Like, not obviously, I think people were kind of expecting more, but they got less. but he's not totally just falling flat on his face. I mean, he's in a career one full season now. Well, just about a full season, a little bit short of a full season. And then last year he had 34 games. So in total, he's had, as of the recording of this, he's had 147 career games in the majors, and he's hit 25 homers, stolen 7 bags, and hit 251. You want a little bit more, maybe, but that's not bad. That's like, a solid corner man. If you're like looking at like maybe 75 to 90 overall in a draft and you're looking for a corner man, I could see Gunnar Henderson being there and being totally valuable. So yeah, I like him. I still like Gunnar Henderson. Absolutely.
Yeah, and since the start of June, so give him a couple of months to shake off kind of you're still very young at the time, still very new to the league. So June to now, he's hit 279, 16 home runs, 4 stolen bases. That's kind of the pace that I have him at, is a 25 to 30 home run guy who's going to hit 270, 280, and chip in, what used to be Freddie Freeman-esque stolen bases, which would be, 10 or so, but now Freddie Freeman these days is stealing, everything. And I can't make sense of that, but that's okay. We'll move on. Let's talk about some bullpens, Gray. Over in Detroit, does it? I think Jason Foley has the role. Do you see anybody else that might get some saves in Detroit, Gray? I know it's weird, but like they're actually hitting okay, so maybe there's going to be some sneaky wins.
Yeah, no, I mean the Tigers, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would guess that the Tigers must be one of the hotter teams for the last week or so. So yeah, I mean Jason Foley's been great. I wouldn't mess with anyone else there, like Cesarino or Lang or anyone, whoever else is there. I wouldn't mess with them. But Jason Foley's been solid, and I would totally grab him if he were available.
All right. Moving over to Toronto, Jordan Romano returns from his injury stint. Safe to drop everybody else in Toronto.
Yeah, you can lose them.
Okay. Kyle Finnegan, Hunter Harvey seem to still be kind of doing a split thing in Washington. Are you interested in either of them or avoiding unless you're desperate?
No, I think Finnegan's been fine, and Davey Martinez said it's Finnegan's job. So yeah, which I sort of believe that too. I don't think it's just hot air, because the Nationals should use Finnegan rather than boosting up Hunter Harvey's arbitration or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose. Kansas City. Do you want anybody?
No, no, I don't. I had Carlos Hernandez in a few leagues, and I've already dropped him. I wouldn't mess with anyone over there.
Yeah, that's totally fair. They're kind of a mess. They're in like a 5-person committee, and only like one of them has been any good. So let's just avoid that one unless you are absolutely desperate and chasing. Will Smith had a blown save. I mean, I guess we could potentially be looking at a committee approach again there if you're looking to speculate.
Yeah, I think he came in on Sunday and gave up 3 earned. I don't think it was a save opportunity necessarily there, but he hasn't looked good now, going on like a few like outings. So I'm not saying Will Smith has been great recently. He's been a mess. Aroldis Chapman has looked good. So maybe they go to Aroldis for a save or two. Maybe that's what happens. But Bochy really seems to like Will Smith. So I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily like going to be Aroldis's job, but it could be. At this point, I would still hold on to Will Smith unless you're just swimming in saves and you don't need Will Smith saves. Then you do what you want. But I would try to hold.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would definitely hold Will Smith. I was angling more at maybe the time to pick up a role this if he's not already picked up, because he could get some looks here. As much as I'm with you that they are kind of a give it to a guy and roll with it kind of club, and he's that kind of manager. They're 2.5 on the division lead, and he's cost them, I think, like 3 games in the last 2 weeks, 4 games in the last 2 weeks. So how many more games are you going to let him cost before that comes? So yeah, just saying maybe pick up a role just if you're speculating. But yeah, not dropping Will Smith either. Let's give some waivers and then we'll get out of here, Gray.
Okay, so I got a name for you. Maybe you've heard this guy before. Eddie Rosario? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe I've mentioned him before. I forget. Then there's also Spencer Torkelson, who I've mentioned already. Stone Garrett has been crazy hot. Zach Geloff, who we've mentioned earlier in the show. DJ Stewart. The Mets really has been hot. No one told them that the Mets are supposed to be losing. Someone get the word to DJ Stewart. Jake Cave. I think he had 2 homers this weekend. He's been hot. Charlie Blackmon had a homer on Sunday. He's also been very hot. Kerry Carpenter, who I wrote the lead by on Friday, he's been crazy hot. Pablo Reyes, Red Sox middle infielder, has been hot, stealing bases. And then Tommy Pham hitting third for the Diamondbacks, which might be why the Diamondbacks are losing. But Tommy Pham has been hot, so there's that.
Yeah, Jake Cave randomly is one of those guys who I just love his swing. I just thought I'd throw that comment in there. Always thought he could hit. Just needed to figure it out. On the starter side, JP France versus Boston. Ryan Yarborough, I'm not sure if he's getting Cleveland Thursday or at Boston Friday. I'm not really worried about either of those matchups. I would start him. Dakota Hudson at Philadelphia. He's been good since getting the rotation for the most part. Cole Reagans at Oakland. Javier Assad at Detroit and at Pittsburgh in a 2-start week. Clevenger also a 2-start week versus Seattle versus Oakland. Brandon Fack versus Cincinnati. He's been much better since coming back up from the minors the second time. Alex Faedo gets Cubs in Houston, and Paul Blackburn at Chicago White Sox. Blackburn has been really good over the last month or so as well. So really, and I've always kind of been a Paul Blackburn fan, at least from a streaming standpoint. Always seems to have some nice streaming matchups and perform. So all guys I like. If you have specific questions, you can always find us on Twitter. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is, of course, the at Razball account owner. Like, comment, review, subscribe, whatever, wherever you're getting your podcast. You can follow us or you can watch us on youtube.com/RazballFantasy. Till next time, Gray. Talk to you later.
Late.